The hero's journey is a staple in fantasy. Look at the likes of Frodo, Harry Potter and Katniss Everdeen. More than just saving the world, they're all walking the same ancient path. This isn't some dusty academic theory or outdated narrative formula. It's the invisible skeleton behind a lot of powerful stories, a mythic structure that taps into something deep and primal in the human psyche. The arc is familiar, the call to adventure, the trials, the transformation, the return. And it works again and again. But why? What is so compelling about this narrative structure from a psychological point of view, and why is it more relevant than ever?
Because in the chaos of today, where truth feels sort of slippery and meaning is harder to grasp, the hero's journey as a framing device could be more relevant than ever. It offers something we're all craving, a roadmap, structure, finding meaning, structure, and a coherent narrative in a sea of big data being used by large corporations to manipulate our anxieties and fears, to make us buy random shit is more appealing than ever. And this works not just for stories, but for life. The hero's journey shows us how to make sense of the struggle, how to grow through the pain, and how to return from the dark with something worth sharing. Modern storytellers are reinventing it, blending it with new voices, in bold twists that reflect the world we actually live in. If you ever wondered why some stories hit harder, last longer, or seem to speak directly to you, this is the journey worth exploring. So let's get to it.
In the mid-20th century, mythologist Joseph Campbell studied stories from cultures all over the world, from ancient epics to folk tales and religious texts, and noticed they all shared a strikingly similar pattern. He called this structure the monomyth, or more famously, the hero's journey. In his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Campbell outlined how countless myths follow the same narrative arc. An ordinary person is thrust into an extraordinary world, undergoes trials, faces a great crisis, and emerges transformed. It's not just a storytelling device, it's a reflection of how humans understand growth, identity, and meaning. The journey typically unfolds in familiar stages. It begins with a call to adventure, where the hero is invited into a new world or problem. Often, they refuse the call at first. They're scared, uncertain, not ready, but then comes the mentor figure. Think Gandalf, Dumbledore, or Haymitch, someone who offers guidance and wisdom. The hero then crosses a threshold into the unknown and faces trials and challenges, both external and internal. Eventually, they reach a low point, a symbolic or literal death and rebirth, before returning home with new knowledge, power, or peace. It's a cycle that echoes through mythology, religion, fantasy, sci-fi, and even modern biographies and documentaries.
So why does this matter to you right now? Because even if you've never heard of Campbell, you felt the story. You've rooted for these heroes. And maybe without realizing it, you've lived parts of this journey yourself. So that's the power of the hero's journey. Psychologically speaking, we all sort of frame our own stories as the heroes or the protagonists, as you may. But it is ultimately about each person consuming the story. It's about the choices we make, the fears we face, and how we grow. Most of all, it might give us an illusion that life will eventually come full circle at the end. And all the trials and tribulations will be properly tied up in a nice bow. It might not be true in real life, but it is true in fiction. And there is something comforting about that. It is also something useful to believe if it makes you motivated to take reins of your own story and make it come full circle at the end. So it could be seen as a optimistic framing device for your own life that propels you into action.
We live in a time of constant change. Pandemics, political unrest, technological overload. With so much chaos, people turn to stories not just for escape, but for structure. The hero's journey offers a narrative map that reassures us there is a path forward, there is a purpose to the struggle. When we watch a hero fall, rise, and return, transformed, we are reminded that growth is possible, even in dark times. It tells us that challenges have meaning, and that redemption is within reach. Beneath the dragons and dystopias, the hero's journey is really about change. The external battles mirror the internal ones, confronting fear, finding identity, letting go of the past. That's why audiences connect so deeply with these stories. Whether it's Luke Skywalker learning self-trust or Moana reclaiming her calling, we see parts of ourselves in their arc. These stories remind us that we're not stuck, we're becoming. Some people may argue that the hero's journey is hardwired into the way we think. Psychologists like Carl Jung linked mythic stories to archetypes in the human psyche: the shadow, the mentor, the self. The journey mirrors key life stages: childhood innocence, adolescent rebellion, adult responsibility. Across cultures and generations, humans return to these symbols because they speak to something eternal. The hero is an ideation we need to survive. What makes the hero's journey so resilient is its flexibility. It works in epic fantasy and intimate dramas, in blockbuster films, and 30-second TikToks. You'll find it in African oral traditions, Japanese anime, indigenous legends, and contemporary webtoons. It's about transformation. That makes it endlessly adaptable. Modern creators are taking this timeless arc and making it their own, adding cultural nuance, new voices, and surprising subversions.
Yeah, so here's the thing. In the age of short attention spans and constant noise, I believe the hero's journey has become more vital. It is a useful framework to understand ourselves and others, and it had this positive view that the struggle isn't the end, but just a necessary step for the victory at the end. So in a world that feels hopeless, it reminds us that every journey holds the possibility of change, courage, and return. I am making an argument here on how the hero's journey is more relevant than ever. However, if you look at current storytelling hits, not a lot of them seem to employ this structure, at least in its most obvious, noticeable form. So this is what we need to explore next, how this storytelling device has been twisted and turned for our own current sensibilities. But before we do that, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you've been enjoying this so far. As I always say, every resource on the channel is completely free, including our free Discord server, Lure Guys Tavern. Link for that below. So the best way to support us is by just helping us appease the algorithm gods. And now let's move on with the video.
So, as I've been mentioning, the hero's journey is still very present in storytelling today in different media, even if in a less obvious approach than Frodo, Harry, and Katniss. But what makes modern versions so compelling is how they take the classic structure and twist it, reflect it through new lenses, or subvert it altogether. Let's take a look at how recent movies, shows, games, and books breathe new life into this ancient arc. First, let's talk about movie. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is one of my favorite films of all time. It takes the hero's journey and explodes it across multiverses. Evelyn, an exhausted laundromat owner, is thrust into cosmic chaos, a clear call to adventure. But instead of swords or spells, she faces nihilism, fractured identity, and generational trauma. Her exposure to infinite realities even works as an allegory for how numb we become from being overexposed by this constant influx of information online. The mentor is her alternate self. The death and rebirth is emotional, not physical. Learning to choose love and embrace absurdity in the face of meaninglessness. It's the hero's journey, but through the lens of immigrant struggles, mental health, and existential comedy. In Dune, Paul Atreides is a textbook hero. At first, noble birth, mystical prophecy, a desert world calling him to destiny. But Dune complicates the myth. Paul's Savior Chosen One arc is subverted in a very sophisticated manner. It's about questioning what being a hero or chosen one even means. His mentors are flawed. His visions of the future hint at horrifying consequences, and his rise is steeped in moral ambiguity. The story uses the hero's journey to challenge the idea of the chosen one, not celebrate it blindly. I know Dune is not a recent book, but Denis Villeneuve really dissected what the hero's journey meant in his take as the director of this recent adaptation. Moving on to TV now, we have the Last of Us adaptation. In a post-apocalyptic world, Joel and Ellie follow a kind of twisted hero's journey. Joel, the grizzled anti-hero, refuses connection until Ellie becomes his emotional anchor. Their bond transforms them, but the return with the elixir, Ellie's immunity, comes with a devastating moral price. The story flips the script. What if the hero doesn't save the world, but chooses love over salvation? It's a darker, more human take on the journey. The hero's detours the natural conclusion of the framework by choosing his humanity over heroism. We see this in video games too. Kratos' journey is no longer about revenge, it's about fatherhood. With his son Atreus, he's forced into the role of man. Despite being deeply flawed and emotionally closed, his trials are as much internal as mythological, and the return is a fragile, ongoing redemption. The game reimagines the hero's journey through the lens of masculinity, grief, and breaking cycles of violence. The hero's journey is an internal one of emotional maturity, which contrasts really masterfully with the outward themes of violence and traditional heroism of this series. In Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, Link awakens with no memory, a literal rebirth. As he journeys through Hyrule, reclaiming his strength and purpose, the structure of the hero's journey unfolds quietly through exploration and discovery. The twist, that game gives the player the journey. It's open-ended, empowering, and reflects the modern trend of immersive, non-linear storytelling where you choose how and when to grow. Now moving on to books. In the Poppy War, Rin's arc is a descent. Her journey begins with familiar beats, the poor orphan who earns a place at an elite academy, but her trials become progressively brutal, and her transformation leads not to triumph, but to vengeance and war. The mentor figures are manipulative, the rebirth is a loss of humanity, and the return is not peace, but power. It's the hero's journey turned into a tragedy, reflecting the cost of empire and trauma.
So if you ever thought the hero's journey was too predictable and outdated, just look at it again. These stories prove that it's not the structure that failed, it's how you use it. Today's creators are remixing the structure to tell these stories in different ways. The path is still there, but it's more winding, messy, and more human. Fresh artistic expression. It's often not about coming up with entirely new concepts out of the blue. It's about mixing and mashing your references and repackaging them in fresh ways. So don't underestimate the power of knowing the classic storytelling tropes when you want to be original.
The hero's journey has never been a rigid formula. It's a flexible framework that evolves with the times, and today it's shifting in bold and meaningful ways. Modern storytellers are tweaking the old structure or sometimes reshaping it entirely to reflect new values, diverse voices, and complex realities. Here are 4 powerful ways the hero's journey is transforming in today's storytelling landscape. In stories like Game of Thrones and The Witcher, the hero's journey isn't limited to one character. It's fractured across many. Each protagonist follows their own arc, with separate calls to adventure, trials, and transformation. This creates a rich tapestry where journeys intersect, clash, and reflect each other. It also mirrors real life more closely. There's no single savior, no absolute truth, just individuals making choices in a morally gray world. The monomyth becomes a chorus, not a solo. Shows like Westworld and Dark throw chronology out the window. But the emotional beats of the hero's journey remain. By scrambling time, these narratives explore memory, identity, and causality in ways that now linear stories can't. Heroes rediscover their own pasts, meet older or younger versions of themselves, or question the very concept of transformation. These non-linear structures don't abandon the journey. They fold it in on itself, creating layered storytelling that rewards close attention. In many modern stories, another trend is the final battle being against the self. The goal isn't to destroy evil, but to heal, reconcile, or reconnect. Think of Encanto, where the family's survival depends not on fighting a monster, but on understanding and compassion. Or BoJack Horseman, where progress comes through therapy, apology, and self-awareness. These stories still follow the hero's journey, but the treasure isn't a sword or a throne. It's inner peace.
So this is why the hero's journey still matters. It's a living narrative, bending and adapting to fit the world we live now. It's a fundamental, natural psychological framing for humans to interpret their own reality. So I would argue that the hero's journey is not outdated, and it's not dead. It's constantly evolving. And it's probably gonna be there for as long as we are humans.
The hero's journey will probably always endure because it's elastic, stretching across time, culture, and genre to fit the needs of each new generation. We keep returning to it not out of laziness or tradition, but because it mirrors something elemental in us. Our longing for purpose, for growth, for meaning in the chaos. The journey helps us frame our own lives as stories worth telling, and in a world overwhelmed by algorithms, cynicism, and content churn, the hero's journey reminds us that story still matters. Not just how it ends, but how we change along the way. It gives us comfort that all the chaos of the second act will come full circle at the end.
A writer, a reader, or just someone trying to find meaning on all this mess, don't be afraid of the hero's journey. Embrace it, subvert it, twist it, but most of all, understand it. Because knowing how this timeless arc works won't limit your creativity, would give you the tools to craft something that resonates. So that's it for the video today. Thanks for watching. Once again, leave a like and a comment to help us with the algorithm, and I hope to see you at our Discord server. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into fantasy and sci-fi storytelling. And I see you next time.
Come join our tavern discussion of fantasy storytelling and world building here at Loregeist. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and may your tales be ever epic.